A packed stadium, 80,000 fans roaring, floodlights cutting through the night sky. A ball rolls across perfectly trimmed grass as billions of people around the world watch football, the world's most popular sport, came capable of stopping wars, creating legends, and turning ordinary teenagers into global icons. But here's the strange part. Nobody actually knows who invented it. Seriously, for a sport worth billions of dollars, played by more than 250 million people across the planet, football's origin story is surprisingly messy. Because if you travel back far enough, beyond the Premier League, beyond the World Cup, beyond Pele, Maradona, Messi, and Ronaldo, you'll discover something unexpected. Football wasn't born in the stadium. It wasn't created by FIFA. And it definitely wasn't invented by a group of wealthy businessmen sitting around a table. Its story begins thousands of years ago, in a world completely different from our own. So before we dive into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy football stories like this. Now, let's go back to where the first kick may have happened. Long before television cameras, long before transfer windows, long before billion-dollar sponsorships. Imagine yourself standing in ancient China. Over 2,000 years ago, there are no football booths, no referees, no goal nets, yet people are already kicking a ball. The game was known as Cuju, Assyrians written as Cuju. Historians believe it was played during the Han Dynasty, making it one of the oldest recorded ball games in human history. The objective was surprisingly familiar. Players attempted to kick a leather ball through a small opening suspended between poles. Sound familiar? It should, because despite existing more than 2,000 years ago, some elements look remarkably similar to modern football. Military officers even used the game as a training exercise. Imagine telling today's footballers that their weekly training sessions started as military preparation. Although, considering some managers treat preseason like boot camp, maybe that isn't so surprising. But China wasn't alone. Thousands of miles away, the ancient Greeks had their own version, a game known as Episkyros. Unlike modern football, it was considerably rougher, and by rougher, think less Premier League and more organized chaos. Players pushed, wrestled, and battled for possession while attempting to move the ball beyond the opposing team's line. The Romans later adapted similar games into something called charpas. And if you ever wondered whether football and rugby share common ancestors, this is where the story starts becoming interesting. Because many early ball games mixed kicking, carrying, wrestling, and outright physical mayhem. The idea that football was always played with feet is actually a modern misconception. For centuries, people simply enjoyed finding creative ways to move a ball from one place to another, sometimes with their feet, sometimes with their hands, sometimes with methods that would give today's referees nightmares. And then things became even stranger. Medieval Europe developed its own form of football. Entire villages would participate. Not 11 players per side, not 20-2, entire villages. Hundreds of people could be involved in a single match. There were often no clearly marked pitches, no fixed match duration, and very few rules. The objective might simply be to move a ball to a landmark several streets away. Churches, market squares, rivers, and town gates all became potential targets. Matches regularly descended into complete chaos. Shop windows were broken, property was damaged, injuries were common. Kings repeatedly attempted to ban the game. Yes, football was so popular that medieval rulers literally tried to outlaw it. King Edward II issued one of the earliest known bans in England during the 14th century. The crowds were considered disruptive and dangerous, of course. People ignored the bans because if there's one thing football fans have always been consistent about, it's finding ways to keep playing. Yet despite all these ancient games, none of them were truly football as we know it today. That version wouldn't appear until much later. The turning point arrived in 19th century Britain. At the time, schools across England played their own versions of football. The problem is every school used different rules. Some allowed carrying the ball. Others prohibited it. Some encouraged physical contact. Others limited it. Imagine trying to organize a tournament where every team is playing a different sport. Eventually, something had to change. And in 1863, representatives gathered in London to create a standardized set of rules. This meeting led to the creation of the Football Association, the FA, for the first time in history. Football had an official rulebook. This moment is why England is often called the birthplace of modern football. Not because they invented kicking a ball. People have been doing that for thousands of years, but because they transformed countless local games into a single organized sport. A sport that could spread across the world, and spread it did. What happened next would turn football from a local pastime into a global obsession. Railways connected cities. Factories created larger populations. Newspapers spread sporting news. Crowds grew larger. Clubs formed everywhere. One club in particular would make history: Sheffield Football Club, that founded in 1857, still recognized as the world's oldest existing football club. At the time, nobody could have imagined what football would eventually become. A game played on muddy fields was beginning a journey toward global domination, only accelerate in the decades ahead, because once football escaped England, there was no stopping it. Not across Europe, not across South America, not across Africa, not across Asia. The world had discovered a game that required almost nothing: a ball, a little space, and people willing to play. The result? Football became a universal language, one understood in every corner of the planet. But perhaps the most unbelievable chapter of all was still waiting, because the sport that began with ancient soldiers, medieval villagers, and amateur clubs would eventually become a multi-billion-dollar. And one decision made in 1995 would change football forever.